4, 3, 2, go.
Hi everybody, Stephanie Haney here, your digital anchor at 3 News. I have the afternoon update for you. In just a moment, we're going to be talking with our investigative reporter, Mark Naymik, who was down at the 4th Democratic primary debate yesterday in Westerville, Ohio at Otterbein University. He's going to share with us what the scene was like down there, a little bit of the behind the scenes. I'm also going to let you know the latest about the GM United Auto Workers strike, what it might mean if you see blue pumpkins on Halloween during trick-or-treating this year, and some really exciting news about Garth Brooks coming to town. Now, I am following along on the live stream, so if you do have any comments, let us know. Thank you for joining us. We're streaming on Facebook and also on YouTube. If you don't already, make sure you like our Facebook page and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, we're going to bring Mark in here, and he is going to talk to us about yesterday's debate, the big news everybody was talking about.
Well, first of all, hi, Stephanie. I cannot compete with blue pumpkins. I'm just going to get that out, even though we were all about blue yesterday, covering a Democratic debate. I covered one in Cleveland more than 10 years ago, and going down there now to Otterbein University College in Westerville, just north of Columbus, first thing that struck me is how big the production has grown. We were in a field house where there was a near full-size track that they had converted. So that space, picture us all in there, and there's a track actually around all those curtains.
Really?
And if they had room or seating for 400 members of the media. I was seat 397, by the way.
Just getting in there.
Yep, and it was sponsored by CNN. In case you didn't notice of all the signage there, I felt bad for the print folks at the New York Times, which they had the little square black print, but it was CNN, baby, all the way.
They're more reserved, I would say, at New York Times, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, they did but flawless production. Those things always are. Those crews are in there. It's pretty dramatic how they can convert, literally a gym into at least where we were, a filing center that had all the trappings you need for high-end production. They had a space set up for CNN to meet all of the candidates after the debate. And literally kind of had a red carpet with what looked like those concrete barriers on the highway there, keeping the media away so they could come out unaccosted, of course. And they all had handlers. We'll get to that in a second. In the spin room is actually pretty dead and quiet through the debate. The spinners, or the surrogates that are going to come in, or the candidates, are not in there during that time. Really, it's media, filing stories, typing. It's a little odd because you have the screens, but the sound doesn't match. It's just always off. There's a little delay because we're on this closed circuit. And then things will come alive, and it'll get about as crowded as, a line at Cedar Point for maybe one of the better coasters, maybe not the top coaster. And things didn't get going until pretty late yesterday.
And you guys left early to get down there. I mean, I was in here at 7:30 in the morning. You guys were getting on the road.
We had it down there because Westerville, which is, kind of like a Hudson, Ohio, which is a little bit more local, has a cute little downtown. And is, you can tell there's some money in the area. It's an affluent area, but the campaign supporters for 4 or 5 different campaigns had already set up on the corner and were kind of friendly, chanting at each other. Perhaps my favorite little nugget is the truck that drove through that said "Truckers for Wang," Yang. I'm sorry, which is, who knew? He had about 4 supporters there, who were part of what he calls the Yang Gang. They're all about math, marijuana, and a few other points. That's some of their chants from yesterday. Elizabeth Warren, who is the front runner in almost all senses, raising a good chunk of money, leading in the polls, putting out the most, proposals or specifics. She had the largest group down there. It's really, can't draw too much from it, but when you talk to the people, as we did yesterday, they were a group from Xavier University in Cincinnati. And we did an interview that you can find on WKYC.com with her. She's explaining that her college has a pretty strong Elizabeth Warren support there, and that they are part of a national college group, and that is reflected in everything that's going on with Elizabeth Warren. She has really good support, grassroots college, and so that was there. Joe Biden seemed a little bit weaker. I did see this little note or a little item there that was "Totes for Joe." So it was a little tote bag that said "Totes for Joe," and I don't want to go there, but I'm going to. It felt like my mom has a tote. I mean, I'm not sure he's going to be capturing the young
younger
audience
vote.
with that one.
Right.
There were plenty of Trump supporters around as well. One guy.
I did see some of those on your live streams from the day.
Yeah, and I posted a couple photos on my Twitter account of one gentleman who had, a perfect T-shirt if you were against the impeachment as he walked through the crowd. I can't use the language that was on the T-shirt, but he's basically blaming the Democrats for this impeachment process, and they are the ones who triggered it. And he made his point pretty clear on his T-shirt. There were a number of other Trump supporters down there. A lot of Make America Great hats. The very first person I ran into that morning was carrying a Ronald Reagan mug. So
Okay.
Reagan kind of falls much more moderate in some cases than some of the Republican supporters for Donald Trump. So finally, the moment came in the spin room more than 3 hours after the debate started, where candidates started to come in, but it really was a tease for us in the media. And I know no one really cares, but they kind of said hello and then went right to CNN and did an interview, then moved over to the cameras. And there were hundreds of cameras. And cameras and crews from around the world, which still strikes me this early that we have international media that were there. And some had very specific agendas. There was a new candidate there that night, Tom Steyer, a billionaire. Mm-hmm. He's been leading an impeachment call against Trump, spending a lot of his money, basically spent millions of dollars just to get on that stage. And he's all about climate change. And there were reporters there asking him specifically about climate change. That's what they wanted to talk about. And that guy got such little attention on the debate stage that he talked to any reporter that had a question.
And they didn't really talk about climate change in the debate.
Didn't come up. Again, it may in the next, and I know there's been some Monday quarterbacking that say that issue should be up there because it has much broader appeal than just an environmental, ideological. There's industry, manufacturing, lots of things you can talk about, especially with energy on that. So the spin room, as it got moving, it is traditional in the sense that, you'll see someone carrying a big sign that'll say Beto O'Rourke, and that's where you're supposed to go wait for him. But it takes them a long time to get there. And they all seem to be choreographed, right? They only came out one at a time, so you really wouldn't have competing interests.
I was going to say, if you're lined up to talk to Beto, what happens if Bernie Sanders walks in the room?
Yeah, they seem to have spaced it, and part of that was CNN was pulling them first for a quick interview, then they changed chairs and someone else would go. Speaking of Bernie Sanders, though, he actually is considered one of the winners of the debate last night among those winners list because he was back, he was energetic, and he was himself. I did not see him last night.
Pretty good. Oh, you didn't?
And I stayed there till 1 o'clock in the spin room. He didn't. If he came out after that, I'd be surprised because they closed the spin room at 1 o'clock. They kicked us
It
out.
was an empty room if he came in there after that.
Elizabeth Warren came out towards the end, went to CNN, still drawing a lot of interest, obviously. She's considered also a winner in that she really took fire. A lot of attacks because as a front runner and someone pushing a lot of proposals and pushing back, there was a lot there. We saw Cory Booker, who seemed to bring backup with him. He had his girlfriend Rosario Dawson with him.
Oh, okay.
So she made an appearance, which of course drew plenty of camera clicks. And then she let him speak. She disappeared and then came back as he did. He spent a lot of time talking to reporters as well. His role in the debate last night was sort of playing these, hey, can't we all get along? Let's not beat ourselves up. We're only going to give Donald Trump an advantage doing that. I'm not sure that message is going well. A lot of the pundits said he was middle of the ground to maybe being in the loser category for last night's debate. Maybe the final couple of points on the spin room is it is just that. It is a continuation of where the talking points can live a little bit longer. Maybe they can make a point that they didn't get out. For people like Steyer, Yang, and others that are sort of on that outer rim of candidates, it's a little more attention for them. What really matters is how the message is going to resonate, particularly with Ohio, which it took almost half the debate before they started, throwing their anecdotes about driving a Chevy Cruze out there or talking about Lordstown. I was surprised how long it took for them to talk about the gun issue, given that Dayton is just an hour or so away, and this was the first debate since the mass murders in El Paso and and in Dayton. So it was surprising to me, but they did kind of speak to that Midwest Ohio issues. They've been criticized for kind of flying over those even when they were in a July debate, the second one in Detroit. So all in all, I'm sure they're happy. The production was huge. Again, I'm surprised at how big they've grown this early out, but given, I think, what's going on in Washington between impeachment, Trump, who's constant news machine, I knew Syria would obviously take some attention, China, so politics is truly international now.
It really is. And to your point that international media was there, that is very interesting. It is still early on. We're over a year away from the election.
Well, I threw out a back of the napkin, if you remember this, again, roughly 384 days, I think, away now to the next election, so just a little bit more than
it's going to go fast.
A year.
And it is going to go fast.
Well, hopefully we'll talk more about it.
And we will definitely keep talking to you about it. They've already put out the qualification requirements for the November debate. I think they're a little bit different this time.
They raise the bar each time. They'll have to have a greater percentage of the polls, more money, and some of the candidates are complaining about the whole process. But if it gets too big, then don't have the debates, because not a lot can be said in, last night was 3 hours.
3 hours. That's what I was saying last night. I was watching at home and I said, here's a tip. This is bipartisan. If you're going to have a 3-hour debate, start it earlier than 8 p.m.
Yeah. Well,
and I think you would probably appreciate that too.
It wasn't network television. They can do whatever they want.
That's true.
They weren't worrying about networks. It was close getting on. It was not over when we were on the air last night at 11. But anchor Russ Mitchell, did a great job of bringing it home. We had some bites that were relevant to Ohio that I think gave you a sense of what they were saying. And all in all, it was good that Ohio was in the spotlight.
Well, we're very happy to have you on our political team, Mark, and we can't wait to keep following this with you.
Thanks for having me today.
For the next 384 days. And then some.
We'll
Thanks, Mark. All right, so that is the recap of what happened at the Democratic primary debate last night. Here's a little bit of what we're working on for you right now. Brandon Simmons will have more on this upcoming story in the 6 p.m. What Matters Most broadcast, but we are learning that GM and United Auto Workers have agreed on a tentative labor contract. We don't know the full details yet, but roughly 48,000 UAW members with GM are expected to receive raises and bonuses as part of the deal. We're looking about 2 weeks out until this thing is finalized. Brandon will have more on that, like I said, in the 6 p.m. show. Back to those blue pumpkins. This Halloween, you might see blue pumpkins out if you are hosting trick-or-treaters or if you're trick-or-treating yourself. This is thanks to a viral Facebook post about a child who has autism, and the parent was using the blue pumpkin in order to signify that to potential homes that the child would visit to note that that child has autism, and the child was nonverbal. So that was supposed to be an indicator of that. Lindsay Buckingham talked with an expert from Milestones Autism Resources here, and the expert let her know that that's not actually an officially sanctioned way to communicate that your child may have autism, but the expert said it's not necessarily a bad idea, and it wouldn't be a bad thing if it did become a sanctioned way to communicate that. Lindsay will have some tips for us in the 6 p.m. What Matters Most broadcast from that expert about different options that families can use in order to let people know that the child may have autism ahead of the trick-or-treating season. It is a personal choice for families. And this is also not to be confused with the Teal Pumpkin Project. Carrying a teal pumpkin is meant to signify that a child has food allergies. So be aware of that this season if you are hosting trick-or-treaters. And finally, some very exciting news for the Ohio area. Garth Brooks is coming to Ohio. He is bringing his dive bar tour to Rootstown at the Dusty Armadillo. We are the 5th stop in his 7 cities tour, which is named after his single that he has out right now, Dive Bar with Blake Shelton. It's on October 28th. It's at the Dusty. If you want to go, you cannot buy tickets. You can only win them. Local radio shows will be having contests, so if you're a country music fan, make sure you turn on the radio and you can try and win those tickets. All right, that's all we have for you today in the afternoon update. I'm Stephanie Haney, your digital anchor. Thank you for joining us on the live stream. We will catch you in the 6 p.m. show on WKYC.com and on Channel 3.